All right, part 2. You should have tried to do these two on your own, numbers 5 and 6, and we're going to go over the solutions right now. So doing what I just told you from number 4, maybe you applied the trick or maybe you went through it in its entirety, but you should have noticed b right now is being multiplied by a negative 8/5. To get rid of that, you could divide by negative 8/5. Or dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So I could just flip this fraction to 5/8, keep the sign, and whatever I do to one side, I want to do that same thing to the other side. What happens on the left side is that these all cancel, and I'm just left with my b equals, and now I'm going to actually evaluate this to see what my solution is. In order to multiply these fractions, I need to rewrite the whole number 5 as a fraction. To rewrite a whole number as a fraction, remember you just put it over 1. Now let's multiply across. 5 times 5 equals 25. 8 times 1 gives me 8. A positive times a negative should give you a negative 25/8. Is that simplified? No. I would rewrite this either as a decimal or as a mixed number. So I'm going to just change this to a mixed number. 8 can go into 25 how many times? 3. That would give us 24. So 1 is left over. Keep your denominator. So your solution, you should have gotten negative 3 1/8. You also could have changed this to a decimal because you could just do your long division. If you really wanted to, you could divide 25 by 8. If you changed it and got a decimal, you should have gotten 3.125. Still negative. So either of those solutions are correct. Give yourself a nice star if you got that. Again, you could plug it in and check your solution and make sure you're correct. But let's jump over to number 6. Write the word sentence as an equation and then solve it. So we're doing practice writing from word phrases as an equation. So a number multiplied by 2/5 is 3/20. Remember, my keyword is, what does that represent? You should be thinking an equals sign, which let me actually move this up. So I know that this should equal 3/20. I see that word multiplied, so I'm multiplying some number. I don't know what that number is, so if it's an unknown value, that's where your variable should come in, by 2/5. So I should have like 2/5 times x. I'm going to use x as my variable. If you used any letter, A, B, C, Y, Z, doesn't matter, doesn't have to be X, you're still right. Show that they're getting multiplied, I put them next to each other. Do not use a multiplication sign. So I shouldn't have seen 2/5 times maybe a variable Y. We don't use that as our multiplication sign anymore because it looks like a variable. You could have, like say you used y, you could have put like a dot to show multiplication. That is fine. But again, just sandwiching them together like this shows that it's multiplication. What if you had the order flipped? What if you had your variable then the 2/5? That's fine. But typically, the way you'll want to start writing it is you always put the number in front. It acts as its coefficient. So you'll typically see the number first and then a variable. So this is what your equation should look like. Again, doesn't matter the variable you used. Now it wants us to solve it. So let's go ahead and solve it. Right now, x is being multiplied by 2/5. So you could divide by 2/5. But remember my tip or trick, dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. I think that's a lot easier than going through all of those steps. So let's just keep practicing that. When you multiply by the reciprocal, that cancels. Whatever I did to the left there, I now need to do to the right. So let's see what x equals. You could have multiplied straight across and gotten 15 over 40, but then you should have simplified that. Maybe you like to cross simplify from the beginning, and you should have gotten 3 over 8, which is your answer in its simplest form. If you got 3 over 8, nicely done. Give yourself a nice star or check. Again, you could have went and plugged it back in and did a check to see that you are correct. But nice job. We're going to work with how to solve equations using multiplication and division now, and we'll get lots of practice.